Welcome to the Crazy Wisdom Podcast. I've got AJ Beckner here, and we've been friends for a long time, and we're going to talk a lot about AI and coding. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Stewart. You'll be happy to know I'm in a conference room right now at the Gauntlet AI offices, but over on my desk, you'd be happy to know there is a mate gourd and a bag of mate and a electric kettle. So I'm bringing the Argentinian vibe to Gauntlet.
It's funny because mate is an invasive species, so the actual mate plant is an invasive species, but it also invades your mind and is also
Oh,
invading the
absolutely.
United States as well from Argentina. It's part of Argentine soft power.
Right, right. Well, it is like it's also like I think I hope more like AI people and like vibe coding people do drink mate because it's like if you're working like long hours. It's my favorite type of caffeine to consume after like lunch has elapsed, essentially. And you can just keep pouring the hot water, keep getting antioxidants and caffeine.
Yeah, it's very steady. I don't get the. I've almost entirely replaced coffee with mate, and it's a very steady. It's not the up and down that you have with coffee, which is definitely better for more sustained productivity.
Yeah, I would definitely have done that if I don't love coffee.
Yeah, yeah.
But like I do pour overs and stuff, so I love like the flavor of like different like single origin coffees. But I have one coffee in the morning and then mate the rest of the day. Essentially, it's the stack for coding now.
The caffeine stack, the Martin stack. Okay,
Right.
let's get into it. What
Cool.
what have you learned about AI coding? You know, because you are a developer for a long period. Like
Yeah.
you were already developing with no problem. And how have you adapted to AI in your coding?
Yeah, that's like interesting. So I think I'm like kind of like new-ish to the space. I was just uh getting into AI around the time that we met, like back in Argentina, because I've been doing like coding and like startup stuff for like a while, and then like 3 or so years ago I got into like URBIT and like Web3 stuff, and a lot of those like platforms use like newer like languages, like their own like specific languages. So when LLMs came around, they weren't great at like coding a lot of those languages, you know, like including to a certain extent Solidity, but definitely like the languages like for URBIT. And even people still complain that like Rust is not great with LLMs, although I haven't necessarily tested that myself. So I was kind of like ignoring it the first like year and a half of like the LLM boom. And then when I started doing more projects outside the URBIT space, I like saw everyone using like Cursor and Claude. And in fact, I found out about Cursor at your meetup in Argentina, kind of like very slightly in advance of its like hockey stick takeoff. So like for the like 2 months like before that, I was like really like, holy shit, this is gonna change everything. How do I like prep for this? And then of course like now everyone like have that huge growth to $1 billion valuation. So the main thing is I'm super impressed at the extent to which it changes the like topography of what you care about. That's actually kind of like my entire thing right now was when I was like working on URBIT. Part of the thesis around URBIT is that it's like so hard to make apps and it's so hard to deploy and maintain apps. And that's like a problem statement that's very pre LLM. Certainly, like DevOps is still hard post
Yeah.
LLM, but like the coding parts of that, it's a much more insignificant problem than it was when URBIT started. So like you do a lot of URBIT like things if you're trying to simplify your stack and make it easy to develop applications prior to LLMs. You're like everyone in URBIT kind of dislikes you know, JavaScript, a lot of like web technologies and so on, because there's just a proliferation of crap. But it turns out a proliferation of crap is another way to say that is there's a large corpus of tokens. Um, and if the LLMs are good at sifting through that, now all of a sudden you like 180 and you were like a Hoon programmer one day trying to make like DevX really good on URBIT. And then the next day you're like, actually, like, JavaScript is good, actually.
Yeah.
It's kind of the effect of LLMs. And you can just like build a bunch of like applications really quickly, despite the like complexity and like the lack of understanding of like all of the moving parts, which is
Interesting.
what URBIT was trying to ameliorate.
Yeah, so it's so interesting because you were in the trenches doing hard problems in distributed systems, trying to work on this novel coding platform that is functional and that is just doing all these things to try to solve this problem. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this sort of AI alien intelligence baby comes in, who's just very, very eager to please. And because of how easy it is to get it to run, it's going and making all these changes to DevOps, which essentially simplify everything that URBIT was trying to do.
Yeah.
Uh, and you've got the ability to go in and check to see whether it makes sure what is the line. There's one question I want to ask before, which is what is still hard about DevOps after AI. But then I also want to know, with your ability to go in and peer into what it's actually doing, what is your level of monitoring it to make sure it's
Yeah,
doing the right thing now?
yeah, for sure. Um, yeah, so I think like DevOps itself is like still hard because I would say that like the DevOps specific technology, so people who are doing job rather than application development as a job or like OS development, like systems development as a job. It's a different thing, and it's also a really small course. Like there's way more job, probably even more run like Terraform or like these like languages for like turning like AWS into like your Heroku like thing. Like that in like three clouds like AWS, GCP, and Azure. Of course, like you can just like build AI apps and like deploy them to Heroku or like deploy them to Railway, stuff like that. Or, but like again, this is where you kind of like LLMs flip the script. Like prior, things like CodePen and like Replit were for like you're some tiny UI thing that you maybe want to incorporate in a real, quote unquote, real app later. And you use these platforms to like share it with like your teammate who's like also a front end developer, but it's not gonna be your real app. But now, like Replit actually kind of just like sidesteps the DevOps problem for everyone because you're building with AI already, and it's already deployed. Like before you even write your first line of code, you have a server. Whereas like with Cursor, you could spend like, I don't know, however much time building your app. And then once you're done with it, I'm sure you've experienced this because I know you've been learning to code. You like finish your app and you're like, okay, well, how do I get it on a server now? And that's like a whole different challenge. And I think that's actually a much slower challenge than the application building itself. Like even in the like Gauntlet AI program that I'm in, most of the time that most of the things that people spend a large amount of time on isn't actually on the building features side. It's either on like connecting pipes or like getting things deployed. So like connecting off is still hard. Getting things on AWS is like still hard. But like doing like 10 features in a day, the complexity of which would take like a single junior.
Uh,
Yeah,
So we got these features that are really easy to deploy, but then, or not even to deploy, there's really features that are really easy to build. And then we've got the deployment process and the servers. And you're exactly right. In my case, servers are this massive complexity, which I couldn't even sign up for an AWS account because it
right.
was so difficult to even figure out what was going on. I've been hearing a lot about Supabase and other types of maybe DigitalOcean being much more user friendly, but that it's funny because that part of URBIT still seems really alive, which is getting servers to everyone, get a server to everyone. Like that seems like it's actually really important now, more important. Particularly, you have all of these devs who are. I would be curious to hear what are the newbies at your program kind of learning about this, because it must be a huge challenge to help them get. Are they using
Yeah,
Replit?
I would say that there's two like archetypes, right? There is like people who are new to being engineers, like they just finished an engineering degree, um, and they have one set of challenges, but they have done like a bunch of like application development in their degree. Not like a bunch, but like
Yeah.
they've been exposed to it. But then there's people who have some other domain expertise and like new Python to like do like
Mm.
stats or something, and that was the extent of their programming experience. So they have never built an application or been exposed to that. And that's actually a different case entirely than just being new to an engineer. And so a couple of those people are actually using Lovable. And I think that Lovable seems to be
Oh,
like the best
what is Lovable?
platform for them. It's similar to Replit, in that it's like an online coding platform. But unlike Replit, like Replit started out for coding, and Lovable is like a Replit competitor. But as far as I can tell, it is AI first from the get-go. I don't know how long it's been around, but the impression that I get, like, it's much harder to look at the code in Lovable than it is in Replit, let's say.
Mm.
And they also connect to Supabase, which was the
Oh,
big blew my
okay.
mind because I heard people talking about Lovable and even recommending that seasoned engineers like use it to like prototype, kind of like V0 from Brussels. But the last time I had looked at any of those tools, it was front end only. So like I build out a whole front end, but then I have to take the front end that the system developed and like put it in my application. I didn't really like that because I like more like control over everything, having come from an engineering background. And the biggest thing there is like you're just not going to have a backend if you stay in that platform. So when I did try Lovable, one of the weeks here in Gauntlet, like I spent like the whole day Monday playing around in Lovable. The first thing that was most surprising to me was that they had a really tight integration with Supabase, which is a backend as a
Mm.
service. So it kind of lets you like store your data, do some interactions without having to write like a whole backend. And it's really powerful to have the like AI front end and Supabase backend thing. And even you can prompt the AI to do some of the like
That's
backend
interesting.
rules, or like you can build your data types in Supabase right from Lovable. So there are a few students, at least one that I talked to a
Yeah.
bunch, who is doing the whole program so far without like really opening cursor much at all. It's like entirely in Lovable and Supabase, including for mobile development, because this is
Wow.
Lovable like a web app, and this week we are doing mobile development. As one of the parts of the stack. And he was actually worried because he thought everything he was doing would not necessarily apply. But because I'm from like a startup consulting background, something we used to do is we used to do web apps and then package them for mobile in this technology called Capacitor. I mean, the current one's called Capacitor. It's kind of the spiritual successor to what existed then, which is called Cordova. But it's a web view that wraps your web app and like packages it for mobile. So I suggested to him like, well, maybe see how it'd be interesting to learn if Lovable is easy to take like the React app from there and like package it in Capacitor to distribute as a mobile app. And he successfully got that working as like a non-engineer, non-programmer, just doing like AI coding and like vibe coding for
Wow,
like
good.
4 weeks at that point, which is fucking
So
awesome.
let's go back to Replit. I also want to talk
Yeah.
about MCP servers because they feel like they're really important. And if nobody, your program is using them, I think they should be.
Yeah.
But Replit feels like I used it right when they built their initial program. It was still in beta, and it wouldn't get out of the valley of death. I would just get in the valley of death constantly, and there would be no way to get out of it. And I got a couple very simple programs working, but outside of that, it hasn't actually done that much better. But I haven't used it in many months because I got Cursor MCP servers, which now allow
Mhm.
me to build applications on my own without doing much coding. Has Replit increased to the ability where it is giving this power for non-technical people to build applications? Have they? Have you been seeing that?
Yeah, so I haven't used Replit myself. I did try out Lovable. And other people, there are some people here using like Replit, but I haven't talked extensively to them like I did. But the understanding that I have is that I believe that Replit is doing something similar to Lovable vis-a-vis like Supabase or some other backend as a service integration. So you can do your backend stuff. And the thing that I saw Amjad actually tweet about like yesterday was that they also, I forget if they're shipping React Native or like making it easy to package like Replit apps in Capacitor, but they have like mobile, like native mobile. This other guy through packaging his app for mobile from Lovable. So like the pattern that we were like Gauntlet actually this has happened a few times where Gauntlet like needs to solve a problem for like a certain subset of the people building, and we figure out a solution for it, and then some company in the space like shortly afterwards like launches a product that like would have made the main technical challenge for those people that week trivial because they just would have gotten it out of the box. So it's been interesting to see that we are in fact at the like bleeding edge of how to build with AI.
Well, and also it reminds me of just like nothing can be planned for anymore. And
Right.
if you extend that out into the future, like how much of everything that all of us are working on is actually going to be around, particularly
Yeah.
in a planning for a business to try to make money out of software, feels like a very interesting thing. And it feels, for me personally, I'm moving more towards services rather than products. I think products, there is still a product to be made, but I'm not. It's going to be really interesting because it seems like every 6 months the leverage that one coder can get or even one non-technical person can get massively expands to the point where it's just like it's going to be crazy competition. What's your take on the future?
Yeah, I think that'll absolutely be the case. I think right now we are in a period where there is like huge arbitrage opportunities for people that see this because there's a lot of people that don't. There's a lot of really great coders that because they're so used to coding, when they like try out AI tools, they try out like Copilot
Yeah.
better autocomplete. And there's some for some reason have like blindness to the ability to treat like the cursor, like the composer agent as like an entire like junior engineer that can like get stuff for you done, like get stuff done for you again and again. So I think there's this like gap where people who do see the value in that will be able to capitalize on it. And I
Uh,
think the edge where people are making like applications or services in the adjacent possible will be very competitive. But what won't be competitive is people with no coding experience. Like, say you're a marketer and you want to try using AI and vibe coding, like you can use AI to like double your skill set and like get that like product skill set. Whereas if you're an engineer that's resistant to coding, you're not going to like learn how to advertise your product online necessarily. So I think there was this like thing where like I like to compare it to like 4 hour work week, right? Where there was like this gap where like people who were coming from like print advertising like didn't necessarily know how Google Ads worked. So there was like this gap where if you see how impactful Google Ads would be, you could just make a web page, set up some Google Ads, and like start selling a product and like pay your salary that way. Because there was like so low competition at the time. Of course, now it's like saturated. Everyone's like doing a drop shipping store. Like I had a drop shipping store for a while back. But I think now you'll have that kind of arbitrage opportunity in like SaaS, like micro SaaS, because of AI.
Yeah, I love it. It sounds like the innovator's dilemma is now outside of the companies, although it still exists with the companies. But now it feels like the innovator's dilemma for skill sets,
Yeah,
and success in previous skill sets as engineers actually limits their opportunity to use these tools because of what habits and such. It's the same thing as a
yeah,
company trying to adapt to NVIDIA or things like that. Um, the It's so funny because correct me if I'm wrong, but for the last 10 to 15 years, it's been really funny to talk to engineers about AI because all of them were like, oh, the first jobs that are going to go away are, white collar jobs or
yeah,
artists or all these different things. And no, the first job to go away is coding. In retrospect, it makes sense, right? Because it's pass fail. Certain things are pass fail, and it's just able to be. You can get this AI to do it and know whether it's right or wrong, whereas a lot of the other business fields are very subjective, and it's also language based. So those two, the fact that LLMs are language based rather
yeah,
than the other type of AI, which was, probably a lot of people thought about computer vision, like that
yeah.
was going to be the big thing that collapsed. But then out of nowhere, the transformers and the LLMs brought this whole new way of thinking about AI. What's your thought there?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's maybe like actually the third jobs to go away. I think the first jobs is copywriting, the second is customer support, and the third I would say is web development, like being someone who makes web pages for people to do things. Like that's already kind of gone. Like copywriting is like completely like uh killed by AI. Like the low
Do you have any evidence
um
for that? Because I feel like the copywriting, as a writer, I'm not a copywriter, but I am a writer, and I can't get the thing to write well. Claude has
Yeah,
some
for sure.
styles
I guess
that
what I'll say is that I think all these things are have like a barbell thing. So people who just need some copy for a thing,
oh,
and people
got it.
people who
Yeah,
go to Fiverr for their copy now don't need to. There's no reason
yeah,
to pay
got
anyone
it.
$5
Got
for
it.
crappy
Yep.
copy. You can use an LLM for crappy copy. It inversely means that good copy is actually increasing in value, and like actual expertise and how to do like high sales conversions and like persuasion and like all those like the soft skill sets that go into copy, like there's a premium on that now because you can't just like be better at English than like a non-native English speaker who's trying to run a web store and like write their like ads and their like landing pages for them. Like you have to actually kind of know what you're doing. Um, and same thing with customer support. People who like were choosing between not having customer support or like paying someone in like Pakistan or like the Philippines to do customer support. Now they can get the same quality, maybe a little bit integrated, because there is something about like the versatility of like humans have better tool use than AI, even if they
Wait, explain that tool use.
yeah, so like I think the alpha for humans is that you don't need to have like a MCP server or something in order to like use a particular tool. You have a very generic hardware in order
Mm.
to do things. Um, and for very complex systems, that's just an insane advantage. I think it's actually the main reason why people don't think we've reached AGI
Just tool
yet. Like I
use.
think that reasoning models and even like some of the other models might technically have higher like intelligence or like IQ than like a lot of people. It's just
Yeah.
like their tool use is shit. Like they can only do chat or documents, right? Like that's not if you were talking to a guy who's like
Yeah.
160 IQ, but you can only talk to him over chat or look at Word documents he's produced, like he's not going to be helpful to you, right?
So it's tool use and context windows. Those are the big things that feel like they're in the way
Yeah.
from true AGI. Is this is something I've been trying to figure out both for a potential client and for myself. Is I've got all of these podcasts. I've got 450 podcasts, and I want to be able to make all of them uh, eatable. I'm not getting the right word. Eatable, able to be read by the AI and go and find the insights and everything like that. But it's too big. There's too many transcripts to get into the AI. I could chunk them out, but if you chunk them, then you lose the context. But actually, there's something context retrieval. I think is something
Yeah.
that recently came out that solves that specific problem. But it's just like this, like, what do you think about that problem? That problem seems really big, and it's not probably not going to be solved anytime soon. Do you agree? Do you disagree with the context window?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the example I go to is like cursor, right? Because I think the context window, like you don't remember verbatim everything that you've
Yeah,
read, and like
yeah,
neither should AI, right? So
yeah.
there, I think it's actually like a UX problem. Like when people were talking about LLMs coding initially, they were talking about one-shotting because one-shotting is all you could do. You write a prompt, it shows up in your ChatGPT window, and you paste it, and either works or it doesn't. And in fact, when people talked about Cursor or talked about Claude and GPT coding, when I was still kind of this code, you should be able to program something that takes that code, tries to run it, and like sees if there's errors. And
Oh,
you should at least do one pass of that before giving it to me
oh,
and that it's like correct, right? And like literally like 2 years later, like what's like the main feature or like what's one of the main improvements of Cursor Agent right now is like it can look at the terminal and it can see the errors. So
oh,
you can actually like have it have this like feedback loop where it will actually like fix its own errors, which is that was my first intuition when I heard about AI coding. I was like, this is not going to be useful at least until it can look at errors and like iterate on them a couple of times until before telling me it's quote unquote correct. Of course, it's going to be wrong the first time it tells me, like before it even tries to run the program. Like humans do that too. Like a very junior developer, like an intern, might like code a whole thing and it gets the types correctly. There's no red lines in his like IDE, but people will like who are interns at a company will like send that to uh like senior engineer or like their team lead and be like, hey, I did the thing, and it's like, did you run it? And they'll be like, no, and it's like, okay, well, this means nothing. Like, go run it. You're gonna find problems and fix those problems, and then come back to me. And so it's the same thing with AI. I think the more that you have expectations of AI similar to like humans, the more like sense it makes. So like it needs to fix bugs and like run programs the way humans need to fix bugs and run programs. And
let's take
so
it
for the
no, go for it.
context window thing, I think it's the same. Like asking it to have a context window that accommodates all of your podcasts is like asking you to have a photographic memory. of all the conversations that happened, which isn't actually what you want. So Cursor like solved the UX problem of like how to like actually do like the diffing and like have it look at the
Uh-huh.
errors. So there's
Yep.
going to be a similar thing that doesn't actually have anything to do with the context window that I think might solve for the actual like the meta problem like one layer above like what you're trying to solve for.
Yeah, because I
One
yeah,
in
okay.
mind,
What is
yeah.
that? What I want to hear what you're about to say, but what is that meta problem that I'm trying to do that I can't see? Like, what is that problem?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's like a little bit fuzzy, right? But
Yeah.
basically like even if you can't have a photographic memory of all of your podcasts, you roughly do have a memory of like some certain
Yes.
percentage of the
Yeah.
important things that
Yeah.
happened in them. I know you're big into like the
That's
space
it.
opportunity thing, and you like know
Yeah.
you like, have actually read the studies of like how much of that stuff do you remember? And like because of the context window, LLMs have the UX appearance of remembering less than what that window is for us, although it's pretty low for us, if I recall correctly. Isn't it like 20% or something crazy low?
Uh, yeah. You mean like in this conversation, 90% of everything that we've talked about will be gone
Yeah.
unless we have a strategic reminder in 4 days.
Right, right, exactly, exactly, exactly.
Much.
So it's like 10% for humans.
Yeah.
And the UX bug is that for LLMs, for large things, large sets of context, it appears people expect it to be like a human and expect it to have at least that 10%, but it's probably much lower. It's probably closer to like 1%, especially for
Yeah.
like a huge corpus
Yeah.
like your podcast, right? So there are other techniques you could use to try and ameliorate that. Like there's like a this like cascading summary thing people are doing where you like summarize like one of the podcasts and then you like have that done for every podcast and then you summarize like sets of summaries of like related stuff to like try and create like a knowledge tree that it can like search down to like get to the right thing. There's also just like you could chunk it and do basic rag and then like grab the podcast from that. So there's a bunch of different ways to go about it. But the point that I'm making though is that I was really worried about this context window problem with respect to coding because there's large code bases. I don't think about the context window of Claude or Cursor anymore because all the tooling that they built around it,
Uh,
you give it the right context, is just correct. And so now that you have like
okay.
just enough tooling to give it that context, you can get what you want out of it, even without them improving the context window. And I think the same thing will happen for long form text-based stuff, just like it did for code.
Well, maybe I could use a cursor for this as well. Maybe all I need to do is just get all of the transcripts from the 450 episodes into one directory in cursor, and
Yeah.
just maybe I'll just start with like 20 or something like that, and then see if I can make that actionable. If I can find little things inside of it, that might be the
Yeah.
solution.
Yeah. Yeah. I think
There's
that'll
also, while you're talking about it, I was thinking about metadata, and that I should
Mhm.
just go get metadata from all the different podcasts as the first step. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly, if I were trying to do the summary and rag thing, you would definitely want that metadata in like your alongside the chunks,
Got it.
alongside your vectors. Um, because that's how you go from like you like with like just rag with just the embedding, you go from like what someone's asking about to like which snippet of podcast conversation
Mm,
it is. But you need to know like which episode number that's from, who were the participants in the episode, did those participants have any other episodes? Like those are things that you want to get to quickly without having to do vector search for them. And you can do that with like, well, yeah, metadata.
brilliant. Awesome. So what are what is the goal of the program that you're in right now?
Yeah, it's basically to like learn like the best ways to build with AI and build AI products. So the reason that it came about, and I don't have this like memorized, so I might miss some details, but my understanding is that there is like a handful of companies in Austin, certainly a lot of ones in like the portfolio of like ESW Ventures is like a PE firm here, right? And they were trying to hire AI engineers because they're big into automation. They were like one of the big like outsourcing, like they're a PE firm that like made their like money on like outsourcing companies that should be profitable but aren't, like startups that should be profitable but aren't. So they're doing that with outsourcing since like the late 90s. And now they want to do it with AI. And it turns out that it was really good to hire Stanford CS people to do that first set of stuff, but they were actually frustrated with the quality of them to do the AI stuff now. Because like, you know, it's a bunch of like AI skeptical like engineers coming out of there. And also maybe the bar for quality is like lower. I don't know what
Yeah.
they're thinking there.
Some
But
things
because
that
they
have
couldn't
happened
just
in
like
higher
blindly
education
hire,
recently. Yeah.
right, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
because they couldn't just blindly hire Stanford CS, they wanted to just like train up the talent. So they basically hired the people from the founding team of Lambda School
Uh,
to basically run their AI training for 12 weeks as a like accelerator slash like hiring program. So instead of like I think Austin, the guy who ran Lambda School, had been doing like some AI training, like paid, like for individuals, but they basically were like, we'll pay for as many people as you can get to take it, like above a certain they have like this like aptitude test that they've been using for 20 years. So the people above a certain like level of like aptitude and coding ability, as many of them as you can get, we'll pay for them to go through your program and learn how to build with AI and build AI features. And every single one of them that completes the program, we like have a job for because we can't like hire enough.
so brilliant. And
Yeah.
it goes against the sort of AI utopia, dystopia, which is so popular these days, which says that all jobs are going away, everything's going away, AGI is here, blah blah blah. And but then you've got companies who are doing good AI work, needing to hire people because nobody knows how to use this thing. That's the whole reason I started AI Whisperers, is because
Yeah.
it was so interesting to be at a company where they had all helped OpenAI develop all of these things and they didn't know how to use these chatbots to actually do things.
Yeah.
That's changed a lot. A lot of people have jumped on, but still, it just takes such a divergent thinking to jump onto the AI tools. Would you agree with
Absolutely.
that? Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, like, the thing I was gonna that I thought of when you started mentioning that is that it isn't surprising at all that this is the way that it is. It's exactly that barbell thing that I mentioned earlier, where like building like crappy websites, like crappy products, like people can just go to AI or Lovable to do that for themselves if they like need something quick. Whereas like people who want to try and like compete with things like HubSpot or Slack or some other like SaaS company, and they want to do it with a team of three engineers building like tons and tons of agents, like that's the other side of the barbell. It's like a very high bar, and like the people who should theoretically be qualified to do it in terms of human capital are resistant to the idea that this is even possible. So you really need to select for people who are like really highly skilled, highly intelligent, but also high in openness and like can
Yeah, it's
actually
high in
like
openness.
rock like
Yeah.
yeah, I want to like everything's going to change and I want to be on the forefront of that.
Yeah. High in openness. That's probably a key characteristic of
And
AI.
conscientiousness, which is why they have us here doing like 12 weeks, 80 to 100 hours a week, just like building all day.
How are you personally handling that? Is that something you find easy, or is it hard to do the full
Yeah,
thing?
it's like fairly easy. It's like actually very exciting. Like I find that it's one of those confusing things where like if you're burnt out, what you need isn't like less work. It's like a higher quantity of work, but it's like work that you care about. So when I was like burnt out after like leaving like my URBIT startup, I was doing like way less stuff. But actually, this is less stressful than like languishing, like post
Yeah.
quitting as a founder, right? Even though it's like a lot of hours, because it's so fucking exciting. Like there's like 130-ish um guys and gals here. Everyone's like super brilliant, super excited to be doing this stuff. And even though we're like doing, yeah, like a lot of building, and like everyone else who moved to Austin for this program doesn't even have like a social circle in the
Yeah.
city. So
So
it's
yeah,
cool to just be
they're
around.
all
Like, this is their social circle. Everyone they
yeah,
know in Austin in this office
which
and
is
is
a cool
talking
thing
about
in
AI
its
all day,
sense,
right? Yeah.
which is like one of the byproducts that makes it me. I'm now jealous. Um, uh, what what are you working on? What are you using AI to do now that you couldn't do earlier?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I mean, like because we're doing so much for the program, I haven't had like a ton of time to
Oh, so
do
you're helping
projects while I'm
the
here.
program itself.
Well, I'm participating in the program.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
But oh, okay, got it. So you're just learning at the moment. So you're learning along with everyone else.
Yeah.
So that's why
Yes.
you haven't been
Yeah.
going
It's
out.
weird because there's people of varying like skill sets. Like there's some like recent grads in the program. There is some like career change people. There's a few. So there's a lot of like 25 and unders. There's a handful of like 45 and up that are like I got laid off as like an older individual. I need to like
Mm.
reskill, like do my thing. And there's also like a minority. There's like I don't know, maybe a dozen or fewer people in my boat who like have been doing this type of like building for a long time without AI, and like just left like a startup, or like there's a guy who left like
Yeah.
Microsoft because he was like
Uh,
fed up with Microsoft, right? So they like left some like cool like opportunity, and we're like, all right, the next thing it has to be AI, otherwise like I'm just wasting my time. So that's like the boat that I'm in. And
yeah.
they seem to be having like a good time of it. Like I couldn't have imagined when I saw this program, I was like in disbelief because kind of my entire professional history seems to like exactly like prepare me for this kind of thing, which is why I jumped on it. Like I
Well,
found out about it
how so?
like a week before it started because I was doing startup consulting for a while. So
Uh,
after I did my first couple startups while I was still in college, like in the incubator at the school, um, I wasn't sure I wanted to do another one after the second one. And but I did like working with startups. So I was like, okay, I guess I'll be a consultant and help startups. So I had this like consulting practice where startups that like had a little bit of seed funding and didn't have like a technical team, I'd help them like they basically like pay me to help like build like their MVP or experiments for stuff. So I would try and speed build like without AI for them so I could like get them like a
yeah,
demoable
interesting.
or a product they could like put in front of users and like
So
learn
it's
from.
almost
So
like a fractional CTO.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. In fact, one of my coworkers at my old job who like was had like a similar background, like his branding was like fractional CTO for sure.
Hmm. 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 Interesting. Um, okay, so but what are you learning about AI that makes you think that? So yeah, okay, so startup
Yeah.
consulting, getting so rapid development. So you were already in rapid idea, going prototypes, and now AI perfectly fits rapid prototypes,
And that's
which can
that's that's how I ended
yeah,
up at
go ahead.
URBIT, for example,
Yeah.
right? Is like I was interested in finding like simple, widely applicable stacks so that I could just like build anything really quickly. And I was focused on choosing technologies such that that would be the case. So for a while it was like React or Angular and Firebase. So it's like we have like a simple little like JavaScript front end. We talk to like this backend as a service, so we don't have to build a backend, and we can take these things and like put them in a technology like Cordova or Capacitor if we want to ship to mobile. So I'm just doing one programming language, one framework, but getting like iOS, Android, like backend, like web. You could use it to make web pages as well as apps, right? So there's like these broadly applicable technologies that I was using. But now you can do it in whatever you want because like LLMs know Go. Like you can make a Go application and do speed building with it in a way that I don't think was true like previously.
So prototyping versus full functioning apps. Most people say, particularly developers, and I think particularly the skeptical developers say, okay, you can build a prototype. You can't build a full functioning app. There's no way you're going to be able to build a full functioning app with everything that's required. Do you agree that that's the case, or do you disagree?
I disagree that that's the case. I will say that I think what they are picturing in their minds,
Uh,
they're correct about, which is a lot of these people aren't people who have done a lot of greenfield projects for
uh,
small companies or startups. So if you're working on like some specific team, like at Microsoft or something, and you're looking at AI and you're looking at all the code bases you're in, you're like, could AI generate all of these like microservices and all these code bases prior to the first user seeing it?
uh,
No, obviously not. But that's
yeah,
also not how Microsoft got like that's
built
not how all
in.
that stuff
Yeah.
came to be. It's like I'm sure there's like analogy related to like buildings and architecture. But like um it's like the same thing. Like how what main the process of like maintaining a cathedral that already exists and the process of like being like a peasant in like the Renaissance and slowly making cathedral exist, like your kid and your grandson all laying bricks for it is like very different than the process of like
Notre Dame,
actually
like
upkeep,
fixing Notre
right?
Dame.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. How many clean slate recoding do you think large companies have to do? Do you think Facebook and Microsoft, like at various points, had to completely start over? Do you think that that's the case? That
It is technically the case, but not in a totalizing way. The way
yeah,
you phrase it, it's more like the ship of Theseus. Like if
uh,
they have a front end and they have like 100 microservices backing up that front end, do they replace all 100 microservices in one go? No.
yeah,
Like one of them is like falling over a lot, like it's not handling the traffic. So they spin up a team to rebuild this specific microservice. And then next month, another team is doing that with a different one. So over the course of like 5 years, maybe 80% of like your back end at like any fan company, like it might be rebuilt to a significant extent. Um, there's some like core services where maybe the like periodicity for that is like longer, like maybe like it does like stick around because like it's like more critical. But like no, it's kind of like endemic to the like especially at Netflix, right? They're like obsessed with uptime, and they even built systems like Chaos Monkey to like take systems down so that you know that the surrounding systems don't go down when one system goes
Uh,
down. Systems like that are really easy to like ship of Theseus, like gradually rebuild and modernize as time goes on. That's kind of the whole point.
so is that what is a microservice? At what point does a company need to build a microservice? I imagine it has to just do with the complexity of once you're building a huge application that's serving millions of people, then you just need to make it as modular as possible.
Yeah, it's like inexact, but this is exactly the piece of context that the people who are detractors of using
Yeah.
AI in companies are missing, which is that pretty much every product when it launches is going to be one code base, like a monolith. Maybe it's two. Maybe there's like some front end,
Mm,
back end stuff going on. And then at a certain point, when you're like getting users, the application breaks, and it doesn't break across the board. There's usually like one feature or one like API or part of it that is taking like it doesn't handle the traffic. It's like the weak link. So what you
yeah.
end up doing is you end up isolating that part, taking it out, and moving it to a different service, like a different deploy, so that you can scale it. You could put 100 servers behind it, even if every other part of the app was running fine just on your one Amazon server. So
Interesting.
like when yeah, when it's one code base, everything has to scale evenly. So if you need 100 Amazon servers to run this one endpoint, now everything and like all the compute for all parts of our application need to scale up. But it might be more cost effective to like move out one part so everything else can stay
Yeah.
at
Got
like a
it.
low level of scale, and the part that like is taking all the traffic like can scale up independently. And then it happens again with like a different piece, so you break that out. Maybe
Uh,
it even happens not in like the main monolith, but like the part that you broke out now actually needs to also be broken out into like two pieces because like the most common one is like um something that takes a lot of traffic might break. And then after that is fixed and is scaling, you might realize that the like people reading data from it and people writing data to it also scales differently. So maybe it's actually two different
uh,
services that have like a message queue between each other. One of them only has like data written to it and then puts it on the queue. And then the other one only has like data like read from it. And those actually might have different scaling requirements. So you gradually like this thing gradually expands the more that you learn about the different scaling requirements of each part. And the key word there is learn about. It's just like a business. If you look at all those things, engineer probably could identify stuff that could theoretically be broken out into microservices, but they don't actually know for sure which
hmm,
of those things will be taking the most traffic first based on the usage patterns of actual users that have yet to use your app. So even if you did use AI to make an application with like a bajillion microservices, your assumptions about which of those microservices would take the most traffic are likely to be incorrect.
yeah.
For like known domains, you may be able to look at competitors and look at like the use of their tools and like guesstimate it. And you may be correct if you have like very high fidelity view of that. But if you don't, like especially if you're like a totally new category of product, the thing to do is just like ship it, see what
Test it.
breaks, and see what needs to be done to continue scaling.
Yeah, it's
And that's
super.
totally
Yeah.
doable with AI.
That's what?
That's totally doable with AI. Like AI can ship a monolithic application. When it starts breaking, you can make one microservice for the part that's taking on all the load.
Oh, that's a
And you
really
can,
easy thing, right? Because you
yeah,
can just you can get Cursor to read your code base, get the context it needs, and then build out that specific microservice.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's why the engineering skill set won't go away. It's the
Yeah.
developer or
Mhm.
like web developer skill set that's going away because the only part of engineering or the only part of software engineering that looks anything like other disciplines of engineering, like mechanical, electrical, is what they call site reliability engineering, which is the guys at like all the FAANG companies and like Fortune 500s, where their job isn't building any of the software or infrastructure. They like implement tooling that looks at how this like software and infrastructure is taking
Oh,
on, and they like measure it and like tweak, give teams recommendations about what needs to be tweaked in order to prevent things from breaking.
it's, it's just crazy how complex everything is.
Yeah.
Uh, and that's just like the state of the world is that complex. And but then AI is just going to come in and eat everything and make it seem a lot less complex, except for anybody whose business it is to be in that complexity and
Right. Which
understand.
would be like the real engineers at the one side of the barbell. And that's the thing that I don't think URBIT solves for, to like circle back to that, is like
Yeah,
the example I like to give is like when people talk about speed building and talk about building with AI, one of the people that people point to is like Peter Levels, who like built like all of his products by himself, like Nomad List. And they're like, yeah, like with AI, like everyone
we're
with a
all doing that.
product can be like Peter Levels, and he's a one-man company. Um, but actually, that's not true. He's not a one-man
Yeah,
company. He's a two-man company. The other guy that he hired is his DevOps guy, who's also kind of his SRE guy. And that's the same thing for URBIT, right? Like URBIT's like actually trying to like simplify the stack so anyone can run their own server and host their own applications. But everyone uses URBIT specific hosting, where the engineers employed at the hosting companies are experts in scaling your URBIT as needed, or doing it for as many people as possible that you're onboarding to URBIT, right? And like I don't think anyone who's like a mundane user of URBIT could like run a host in that way. Like there's very few people I've met who are like hosting their friends, and the ones who are the kind of people that would be qualified to be employed at those hosting companies anyways. So like this DevOps problem, this like SRE problem is the thing that's not going to go away. It's going to actually become much more valuable because it's at the other end of that barbell.
Yeah, DevOps. That goes back to the question: is what are the parts of DevOps that still exist in the AI future? A lot of it's going away. 80% of it's going away. 20% will remain.
Yeah.
Feels like people are going to build really easy user friendly ways to build servers. Uh, yeah, what's left of the DevOps?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the DevOps, I think URBIT's actually an early indicator of how that'll work in the AI space, because like they pretty much need to do all the DevOps. And I imagine it's actually the same for like Replit, right? So like I actually was an odd man out when I joined URBIT. It's a lot of systems engineers really interested in like building, like solving these distributed architecture problems. But I'm an application developer, so I was just excited to build apps on URBIT, and I thought it was like ready to build like consumer apps on. And it turned out like was a little bit shaky. Adoption was a little bit shaky, and then they rebuilt like core, which like kind of pushed back the timeline for when you could build B2C companies on top of URBIT by a couple of years. And so the thing that I wanted out of URBIT does seem to be solved for by Lovable and Replit, which is why I'm like out of the space now. Because it's not about like there's two questions. There's the sovereignty question, and then
Yeah,
like ease of like making bespoke UIs for yourself. And like, okay, sure, like Replit doesn't solve the sovereignty question, and that is something that I cared about. But I didn't have the opinion that like my grandma or whatever like needs to be have like a sovereign compute in that
yeah,
way.
yeah.
For her, it's just like if there's a better interface for her and she could just like ask an AI to like change something about the like software she uses to like, I don't know, whether it's like Medicaid, like some government program, you could imagine having like AI driven interfaces for people. Like that's the thing that I cared about. And I think like Replit and Lovable will eventually go in a direction that allows people to solve for that, where you can like make bespoke like craft software for like very niche use cases. And then the sovereignty thing is like separate. Like I know enough that I can be sovereign in Web 2. Like I can run my own servers. It's fine. I don't need URBIT for that. I only need URBIT. I think that
And
everyone, for moral reasons, should be entitled to that level of sovereignty that I already could have.
yeah, it's almost like sovereignty requires what you just talked about, the
Yeah,
curiosity and the conviction to go host your own server. There's the political changes recently that have also made it sort of less necessary to
for sure.
have that sovereignty thing because nobody's going to strong arm AWS in order to give root access and such. Although that might happen,
Yes,
who knows? I probably want to plan for that in any eventuality. So it feels like AI has basically obviated a lot of the accurate problems that URBIT first identified, which is everything has built off of this 1970s, 1980s technology as this core. and it's just slowly creeped and created all these problems. And now AI, with its fast ability, can basically just make those problems. It doesn't get rid of those problems, but it makes them, obviates all of them.
Yeah, in some sense, solving those types of problems is the number one thing that AI is good at. Like I find AI coding actually much like better than yeah, a lot of the writing, like you said.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. How can people find out more about you and your work?
Yeah, so right now my Twitter is this is the AJ. So just remember my name AJ. This is the one. And you can see me tweeting about like AI building and like Gauntlet AI and stuff like that over there.
Cool. Thank you so much.